Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Because Football podcast. I am your host, Andrew Bagley, and thank you guys for being here. Welcome back if you've been here before. If you're a first timer, welcome for the first time. Today, we're going to have a very exciting conversation talking about storytelling, American soccer culture, how we shape these stories, how they make an impact on people, especially as we're in a World Cup year, especially if we have a lot of really exciting developments in American soccer at a lot of levels. So we're going to welcome Greg Lalas. Greg is co-founder and director of Short Corner Media. We're going to get into what Short Corner is offering in the past, in past lives. Greg, original MLS guy, first year player. So he's seen it, been there and done it. Worked for MLS, USL. I'm going to miss more things than I could mention here, Greg, and we'll let you fill in the cracks as we go, but welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Andrew. It's great to be here. Thank you.
I don't know the last time you checked your own Wikipedia, but we're going to definitely add a little bit to your own story here. The opening line is like known as Alexi's brother, and we know you're so much more than that. You're so much more than that, right?
Yeah, well, it's a simple shorthand for a lot of people, right? So, I think when I was a lot younger and maybe not quite as secure in who I am and what I've done with my career and my life, that would have burned me. And now, it's the truth. There are many people who, I still, can go through the customs in Italy or whatever, and people say, Lalas, yeah, like Alexi with the bird. I go, yeah, he's my brother. And they're like, okay, it is what it is. And I'm very proud of everything that he's achieved in his career and his life as well. So he's been a very good brother to me over the years. So it doesn't bother me the way it used to when I was younger.
But I just want to set that straight, right? We're gonna anybody listening is gonna beef up your Wikipedia based on our conversation today.
Oh,
right?
Great! I don't know. The thing is, it's the devil, right? So, like, if someone wants to beef it up, who knows what they might put instead as the first line,
Well, but as you know, man, there's no such thing as bad press, right?
True, so I guess.
There's that, true. Right? But let's go to that, right? I want to talk about like an early memory you've got of the game. That's where we like to start as kind of that jumping off point with all our guests. A smell, a sight, a sound, something you remember. What are some of those like core early memories as a kid that got you hooked on this game?
I think from a playing standpoint, I think the first things were that we spent our early years in Greece, in Athens, and there was a dirt field around the corner from our apartment in Athens, and Alexi and I would go down and play. And I remember the dirt, right? Just when there are 30 kids on what is basically the size of an 18-yard box, and the goals are a couple of rocks, and there's one ball, and everyone's running around. The amount of dust that would just get kicked up in the air. Like when I think of my very earliest memories of soccer, that's the image that comes to me. But I think that my real love of the game, if you will, came from sort of watching the 1982 World Cup with my grandmother in Greece. I remember 82 specifically because she got a color TV for the first time. She bought a new TV for every World Cup. She was a huge soccer fan. And I remember watching games. I was like 9 years old, and watching games with her on her veranda of her little apartment. The volume turned way up. So, it was amazing. It was all in Greek, and my Greek wasn't great. But I could understand what was going on, and Italy had a great run. That to me is probably my earliest memory of like being a fan. And then a little later, my uncle, grandmother's brother, Uncle George, it's classic Greek, right, George? But he took me to my first game, and it was a Panathinaikos game at the Olympic Stadium, and I remember the sound in the stadium and seeing the guys running around under the lights. In Greece back then, the players would rub olive oil on their legs so that the lights would shine off of their legs a little bit more.
That was like the style. Never heard that, man.
Well,
never heard that
before.
Yeah,
because in Greece at that point, right, lights on a stadium were new, right? This is not a thing that happened. Most of the games happen in the afternoon, in the day. And so like the Olympic Stadium in Athens was a big deal. I think it was Atletico Madrid had come for a preseason game. And I remember going and the lights were on, and, I hadn't even been to a professional sporting event in the US yet. And so I think it's following year I went to a Tigers game in Detroit and had that same feeling of like that, that feeling you walk into a stadium and you feel like you've gone into a whole other world.
Yeah, the
That's what it
portal.
felt like.
Yeah.
But like, I remember just the noise of the fans, the color of the grass, the color of the shirt. You're wearing green. So like, you're obviously a Panathinaikos fan like I am, which is good. Uncle George was as well. My brother was for Olympiacos, so screw him. My father was for AEK, so screw him. But I was a
Whoa, so you
Panathinaikos.
guys are all over the board. No such thing as like a
Yeah,
family loyalty. It was just
no, none whatsoever.
constant
Well,
debating and bickering in the house then.
yeah, my grandfather was actually in the academy at Panathinaikos when he was young. I mean, academy, whatever that was back in the 1920s or whatever, right? He was a Panathinaikos guy. My grandmother was Olympiacos because she was actually kind of a socialist communist, and that was the team for that was the Olympiacos, was that team. So my grandmother and I always were best friends, and we got along a lot. We always disagreed when it came to the professional teams in Greece.
And then every 4 years you had to make amends there when because you wanted to watch the games, right? I love that
Yeah.
that was her system. Every World Cup you get a new TV. That's
the
awesome.
way she was. She was, I mean, she would watch Greek national team games up until she died, but she couldn't watch it because she got so nervous. So she would actually just sit there and turn her chair around so she wasn't watching the TV. So she would just listen to it. And she came over in 1994 for the World Cup. And there was the year I graduated from college. So she was kind of given a choice. She could either come for the World Cup to watch Alexei play, or she could come to my graduation. And she chose my graduation. So here's a huge soccer fan that said, education is actually more important than soccer.
Wow,
And
quite
so
a
she
statement
came to my
from
graduation. But what was really nice was about 2 days before my graduation, the United States played a friendly against Greece in New Haven, Connecticut at the Yale Bowl. And so she and I and several other family members drove down to New Haven from Providence and got to go to that game. It's pretty cool.
So cool. Was that Yaya then? That's the Greek name for grandmother?
Yeah,
Yaya? Yeah. Yaya. Okay. So
Yeah.
weirdly enough, I could never say grandmother as a kid. So I would say like it became Yam Yam somehow, and then that became Yaya. So in my family, although we're German, English, Polish, it was also Yaya was our name.
Oh,
So
that's
I always
fun.
think that's like a
great.
weird. And then years later, I realized that was how you guys do it, the Greeks do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
It's
awesome.
it's a great word for grandma, right? It's just like, yeah. It's just such a great word.
All right, Greg. So you had mentioned a little bit there, your college graduation, you played at Brown, right? You went over to
Yeah.
Luxembourg,
Yeah, I
right?
tried.
The parts unknown. Okay.
I went and lived in Luxembourg for about 3 or 4 months after the World Cup
Okay.
in '94. It was good. I was playing with this team called Avenir Beggen. I did not have my visa, so I was not actually allowed to play, but I was training with them. And Avenir, the Luxembourg First Division was like on par with the German Third Division, something like that,
Okay. Okay.
But the day after I arrived there, I remember the team invited me to go watch a game. They were playing against, I think it was Leverkusen, in a friendly, preseason friendly kind of thing with Bayer Leverkusen. And Bernd Schuster was playing for Leverkusen. I think it was Leverkusen. Wherever he
Wow.
played.
Yeah.
So
German.
that's pretty amazing. And then the next day I went to training, and I trained and did my best, and but I could never get a visa, and like after 3 or 4 months of that, I was like, this is not what I'm really looking for. I was also working on the side for a car racing company, so on certain weekends and stuff, while the team was playing, I would go to whatever Hockenheim or Zandvoort or Spa and help out with the racing. So that was kind of cool too. It's like they put on undercards for Formula One races, right? So they'd go around
Okay.
and you'd go to, because if you ever go to a Formula One race, it's not just the one race, because that only lasts like an hour and a half. You've got all this other stuff in the morning, and we
Yeah.
would organize
Okay.
one of those things. So it was kind of fun. But
Very cool. Yeah. And you got your sightseeing in too. So didn't quite pan out in Luxembourg, came back. You played for Tampa Bay Mutiny or with the Revs, going back to New England. But then I really want to dig more into this theme of telling stories around the game, right? So you're a commentator, journalist, Then you found yourself, with MLS the content, then marketing with USL, right? So I want to kind of like first dig into these stories, and I want to frame it in the context of the business of the game, which is what we look at. We can talk about how much we love it and great stories all day, but like the ROI piece, right? Where does stories created as content fit into this larger marketing branding umbrella within the game of soccer? And especially now with Short Corner Media, you guys are doing this independently. So you are having to connect with the clubs, the brands you guys are consulting for and helping to produce stories for, essentially. What is like the ROI? What's the payoff? Because that's always what it comes down to, right? You got to be able to say that, hey, we spent this, it came out this way, this is why. We feel the stories, but talk us through the spreadsheet.
Sure. So I retired in 1998 after my last year. Played in the USL. Played for a team called the Worcester Wildfire. Had a great year. It was awesome. And I then went back to grad school, got my degree in creative writing. So writing was always in what I was going to do. And at one point, I wrote a piece for Soccer America about my time in MLS. And that started getting me thinking about like writing about soccer. And then I got a call from a great man who did PR for MLS for a long time named Greg Lalas. Back then, he was running the website for MLS in like 2004. He said, hey, do you want to write something about Freddie Adu? So the morning of the draft, I went over and interviewed him, right? And I wrote a piece for the MLS website in 2004. And over the next 5 years, I started doing a lot of stuff for the MLS website, and I was running goal.com.
Okay. Yep. No.
So from an editorial standpoint back then, right? And so that was the transition, was this like grad school journalism, and then started getting into the soccer space of it. One of the early voices around that with, Grant Wall and Michael Lewis and Frank DeLappa and Ivis Galarsep and all these like great writers from back then who were getting into it. So Goal.com is a good example, right? So they had a new owner, and he called me up and he said, can you run this editorial side for the US? We want to grow the business here. So to get to the ROI, right? The idea is, how do you create enough content, good content that people want to click on and read? Right? So you can run ads into it. So in the early days, this was journalism stuff, right? It was old school journalism. You're writing the stuff around the ads, right? That's what newspapers were. You're filling in the columns around the ads in many ways, right? But you wanted to get enough of a reputation that people wanted to come back. Plus, you're getting into the ideas of SEO and search and figuring out like, what are the headlines that are going to get people to click, right? And then in the late aughts, and in 2010, I joined MLS when they were going to launch their own digital platforms. Again, back into the business side of this, right? So MLS had before that been paying Major League Baseball, to basically run all of their websites and do all their content for them, right? And then they said, let's bring it in-house. So they contacted me, and I went on staff to build out the editorial team for MLSsoccer.com when that launched. At that point, it wasn't just about writing anymore. It was like, well, what's the strategy that's going to get people to come here? And the strategy and then was, we've got to tell great stories. And those stories at that point were, well, no one's just doing the regular sports coverage of MLS that the NFL gets, that MLB gets, right? Because like, every newspaper in America would cover the NFL, but no one's covering MLS. So fans that exist already of MLS are being short shrifted. So the goal was, let's build something out that services the fans we have. And then as more fans come on, they are going to be serviced as well with the type of content and stories and features and the highlights of games, which were hard to find. So we're building all this up. And then, look, a lot of that at the time, and even today, sometimes people will look at it and say, well, content is an expense, right? You also start to look at ways that content is actually bringing in money. Number one, that I always thought of it as soft power. You're building memories, right? You're building narratives that people can follow, right? Sometimes it was hard to put a tangible thing into a spreadsheet that said, I did this article and it drove this amount of money, right? We would always look at things like, and this is early days, right? Clicks, okay? Well, how many clicks did it get? But I always got nervous about doing hey, let's put a monetary value on each click, because then people will start to do coverage that only drives clicks. And frankly, if you know that this team doesn't drive clicks, but this one does, you're just going to write about this team. But that other team needs coverage too. And so you had to try to be as balanced as possible while being smart to say, yeah, we're going to write about Thierry Henry more than we're going to write about the Colorado Rapids, right? Back then, right? Sometimes it was hard to measure, but as it changed more and more, right? So now social starts coming in, right? So what's the value of a social post? Well, did it get you more followers? Did it get you enough engagement, right? And then the next element that came up was things like custom content and partnerships. And so now my own trajectory is going from, I'm at a World Cup qualifier in the mix zone talking to players and writing down the story after they do this, right? To I'm thinking about our custom content strategy for MLS, right? And I'm working with the partnership marketing group and trying to put things together to say, if we create this number of video views, right, it's going to drive this amount of revenue based on CPMs, et cetera, et cetera. But you're always trying to sort of balance the need to tell great stories, right, with the need to sell things, right? So that's the hardest part in all of this. My belief is that, like I said, it's soft power. You're trying to build a community of fans who are going to be willing to engage with you and ultimately pay you money for a long time. You don't want them to come in, read this one clickbaity article and disappear.
Yeah.
You want them to come in, read an article, watch a video, look at a social post, whatever it is. And then the next step is you want them to subscribe and become a follower. The next step is they're watching 2 videos a week, 3 videos, like they're getting into the story. And then eventually, maybe they go to a game, right? Or instead of going to 1 game a year, they go to 2 because they're more interested in the story of this team or this player or that player. Content and storytelling is about building memories and narratives that people can remember, and it will jog their memory to say, oh, I want to keep following this. I want to know how this story ends. Yeah. And so that's, to me, what storytelling is. You're telling a story, so you hope that somebody cares enough to find out how the story ends a long time from now. And that could be that the story ends with them going to becoming a season ticket holder or buying a jersey, or, these are the transactional sides of it, right? And it's hard to say what it was from a content standpoint that made that happen. And honestly, it's a cumulative thing.
Yeah.
And so I believe that all marketing is content marketing now. You have to be telling a story for soccer fans in the way that they want to receive it. And so that's where you're going to the right platforms, you're going to the right channels, you're delivering it the right way. Like, if you're trying to put news on Instagram, you're going to lose. Put entertaining stuff on Instagram, right? It's got to entertain, or deliver your news in an entertaining way, because people go to Instagram to be entertained. It's a TV channel now. It is not a social network. Right? It's a TV network. It just happens to be in your phone and on this various thing. So
there's a theme of I think patience here and sustainable approach to fandom versus the viral element. And I know that as being a creator as well, as much as different brands, clubs might benefit from, and this concept, we could even stretch this to a Beckham, a Messi, a Freddie Adu. And we can have conversations about what that star factor actually did. Sure, did it bring some attention? Did it bring some visibility? Is that the same as developing this long-term relationship?
Right.
The other piece of what you said there is creating a story that people want to keep reading and be a part of for a long time. And I think that the particularly interesting thing about sports in general, but but obviously soccer we're talking about, as opposed to things like people who really love Star Wars, people who love Harry Potter, other like books, right? Is that if the stories are good enough, people want to put themselves in it some way. They feel connected that they can be a part of it. And so I think that often when I see good examples of storytelling, it's not only how we understand ourselves and the world around us, but it's something that gives us that meaning and that connection. But
Right.
that again is an psycho-emotional piece that is not always easy to like sell because of the very long-term nature that you're describing, because of that very like patient approach, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. Like I always say this, I say, what are you giving to somebody who they're going to sit at a bar with their friend and bring it up? Like that's our job, is to give them something to bring up. Right. So, and they might say, hey, did you watch that game the other day? Great. Okay. Hey, did you watch that Arsenal game the other day? And you're like, yeah. And for me, the storytelling is that next sentence, because now it's going to be, oh man, Martinelli stepped on this other guy, right? Now that became a flashpoint because people talked about it, right? Not because of what happened on the field. That's just, a player being competitive and pushing a guy off because he wants to go score a goal. But then people talked about it and it became something in the headlines in the newspapers. So now you're giving him a story to tell. And the hope is that if you've done it in the right way, that guy's going to want to come back to find out more. And when he or she does come back to find out more, you hope they come to your channel, right? And they watch your video, or they go to your social channel or whatever it is. And you've done the work on the back end to make sure that when they search for it, you're the one that pops up or whatever, right? Those are hard things to measure. But I do think that a lot of this is building a community, right? You're building a community of fans, and you've got to earn their trust that you are doing what you said you're going to do. So that when that moment comes, when you say, hey, will you pay me money? They'll say, yes, because I believe in what you're doing and the story you're telling.
You had said something too where earlier on in the goal.com MLS, you were measuring like clicks, right? You're like, how can we get somebody to click on something? Now,
page views, right? Page views.
We could frame this now in any like social media platform you want. But I think in general now there's a theme of TikTokification of social media, which to me means it's less our follower counts, it's less our subscriber accounts, words that used to mean a lot. And it's a shift from like that social networking to like the themes, the stories of personal interests, and the algorithms are finding us. But there are metrics attached to those: comments, shares. When it comes to me with my long form videos, it's watch time. Yep. Click-through rates. When you're talking with the brands, it's clubs you're representing or brands you guys are helping out to tell their stories with Short Corner. What are the metrics that you're going back to where it's like, hey, we know we love these stories. We're proud of the stories we're creating. This is why you guys are paying us. This is the ROI, right? How do you break that down in that relationship of proving what is or isn't effective storytelling?
Yeah, I think when you bring up those metrics that you mentioned, right? Comments, shares, watch time, right? What you're really talking about is attention, right? Everyone always says, oh, everyone's so busy, right? Okay. Well, and so the truth is everyone is not busy. They're busy being busy, right? And that can be like scrolling or, clicking around to 14 tabs on their web browser or whatever it is, right? And the question is, what are you doing that is going to get their attention, right? And there are various ways to do that. And there are various platforms, whether it's on social, right? Are you optimizing for the channel? Are you optimizing for TikTok? Are you optimizing for Instagram, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And so the stuff that we like to measure is how are we building a fan base ultimately, right? And we can measure that in a lot of different ways, right? It can be the number of data records that you're capturing, right? That's super important. What's your email list? Email to me still remains very, very important. TikTok is amazing. Instagram is amazing for engagement, right? And as you said, it's not the follower count anymore. It's like create the right content for the right audience and it will take off, right? Sometimes, let's be honest, right? Not always, right? Watch time is, are you creating the right video that wants someone, again, to get to the end of the story, right? So you have to make your video in the right way. You have to be the right type of personality that people want to hang out with for 3 minutes, 6 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, right? And I think that if you can reward someone's attention and they will share it, right? Engagement metrics like shares and comments and all that, that's about attention. Those are the kinds of metrics I think about. Like, I do think about engagements, like shares, et cetera, et cetera. Watch time, I think, is really important. I think that email remains important, right? Open rates, click-through rates to some extent, but I am actually more enamored when it comes to email in like a sort of scroll depth, right? Because I believe that email is now, it should be its own content channel. It is not a promotional channel to drive people back. Again, it's a storytelling platform, right? So when I get an email, I want links in there, that's fine, but I want to be able to get something from it, even if I don't click through to anything.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that's true in a lot of cases now, right? Like, how do you get something out of this? You don't click, like, everyone complains about the drop in like link clicks on Facebook or whatever. It's like, but you're ignoring the way the people behave. If someone goes on Instagram, they don't want to leave Instagram. They've come on Instagram for a reason. Don't force me to leave Instagram, you know? So don't force me to leave my email client to go and read this other thing. Just tell me something I need to know here. That's why I have given you my email address.
Yeah. Well, I want to also ask, like, you'd had the roles of being with goal.com, you know, huge website and news outlet. Then with MLS, with USO, with leagues, right? But now Short Corner, you guys are doing your own thing, right? So I'm curious what that's been like to shift, kind of taking these frameworks and these practices you've developed over the past decades and then really trying to customize them to the clients you're working with, right? What's that process been like? What has kind of stuck out to you within this journey of kind of building something yourselves rather than, a larger organization around it?
Well, first of all, there's like the business development stuff, right? It's hard. It's not a straight line. Growing a business is not a straight line. You can have lots of conversations. You can have a really big network, but there's a huge gap between conversations, even pitches and proposals and all that, to somebody saying, yes, we want to work with you and we're willing to pay you money to do something for us, right? That's a big putt, if you will. So that's been interesting. So you need to prove yourself, right, and get some things under your belt. And in the last year or so, we've actually done pretty well to get some good projects under our belt that are proof points of our abilities. One of them is Oklahoma City, where we've been helping the new professional club get up off the ground and managing all of their marketing and PR, including social. The people in Oklahoma City, I hate to say they get it, but they do, right? They understand we are building a community. You talked about connection, right? We're building connections. And the president of the Oklahoma City Club, a guy named Court Jeske, right? He has a great thing. He says, sports is in the memory making business. That's what we do. We make memories for people. They go to a game, they remember having been at that game, right? And it could be anything from, I remember that goal, to I remember my daughter eating popcorn and loving, and whatever it is, right? So you're making memories. We build a community first. That's what you need to do. You build a community. Then you invite that community out to the game, right? So you've got to build a brand, right? And I don't mean a brand in terms of a logo, although that will come, but you have to build a brand that people believe in, a brand that people trust. And what I always say is a brand should reflect, represent, and resonate, right? So it has to reflect the city that it's from. It has to then go outside of that city to represent that city to other people. And everything you do has to resonate locally. But what I'm finding is Short Corner is that there are a lot of things out there that don't think through that lens. And to me, that is a lens of success.
And the interesting thing about American soccer, right? You've seen a international lens on things. I have in going around the world and having different experiences. But it's like every day there's a new announcement of a team at one of our leagues, one of our levels. So when I look at them, I'm like, yeah, what is that process from first announcement that, hey, you guys are getting a team in this town, in this city, this community, to like actually kicking a ball. I find that such a fascinating process because like the meat and potatoes of the sports industry is going to be based around games, players, those things, right? But I think it's so interesting to look at this pre-game stage, pre-players, a coach, right? And how clubs are still trying to say, this is who we are, right? To reflect what their community is and then resonate with them. Could you give us some specifics then of what you guys have been doing with OKC or things you've seen around the American soccer landscape that you're like, this is it. You don't kick a ball for a year or two. You might not have a stadium, all these things, but this is how you really start to build those bonds.
I'll give you some examples from Oklahoma City. When we first came on board, we were tasked with running marketing, some of the PR at that point. It's grown in terms of the PR side, and helping to develop the brand. So one of the things we did immediately was multiple surveys and listening sessions with the local community to say, like, what does Oklahoma City mean to you? What kind of club do you want this to be? What would be something you would say, I'm proud of this club? And then it's like, what do you want to call this club? Give us a name. Give us suggestions. We got 10,000 responses to this, right? So like we have huge community input into what this brand is all about. It's not innovative. It's not groundbreaking, right? But I think it sets a tone of the fact that we are in this together. All of the language that we use is consistently about helping work together to build something. We use language about building a movement, which is a little bit cliche in the American sports world now, but it's true still, right? Because there is still a feeling, I think, in soccer in America that we're kind of alternative still, and we're still growing. And so in a place like Oklahoma City, where the Thunder are the world champions, even though they only won in North America, right? But they're the NBA champions, and OU and OSU football are huge. Right? And softball and kayaking for the Olympics is happening. Right? Soccer is still kind of like under the radar a little bit, but there is a cool community there. And so we were very adamant in whether it's from the surveys or having in-person events where the president, Kortjeski, goes and sits down with people and says, all right, fire away. Ask me questions. Tell me what you want. And we've done like 3 or 4 of those. So we're trying to build this with the community as much as possible. So that's like at the fan level. And then there's at the sort of executive level, right? We put together a committee of civic and cultural leaders in Oklahoma City who can help. They can give us feedback on everything that's happening. They can also talk to their constituents about it, right? So like figuring out ways to spread the word is important. We're 2 years out, right? Before this team will kick, the men's professional team will kick off. We launched about a month ago. We launched season ticket deposits, and we've got 2,500 season ticket deposits sold 2 years before this team plays a game, right? Yeah. So that's pretty good. I'm proud of where it is. I think there's a lot more work we can do and need to do to continue to grow it. But remember, we don't even have a name or a brand or a logo, right? So like there are all these other things that are still coming. Building that community is hard. It's also about like being respectful of it, right? So like if someone fires off a comment on social, right? Respond. Say, oh yeah, you're right. If someone is on social and they say they show something really cool, like it through the official accounts, right? These are like basic things, but I think that it can get lost. And sometimes I think what I'm seeing is when clubs are starting out and launching, or just like they announce that they're going to launch, right? They sometimes don't necessarily think, oh, we need to be present on social from day one. We need to show that we exist and we're credible and we care, and that we're part of this community, and that we know who the players are, not players like soccer players, but the local, soccer community is, and we interact with them, because otherwise people aren't going to believe it. And there's too much history of clubs coming and going in our country. You talked about the flurry of announcements. This team is starting, and this team is starting. I think it's amazing because you get a chance to build something from scratch. But there is a history of those things not panning out. So, hopefully more and more owners are going to do it the right way. Like Boise, right? Amazing what they're doing up there. Obviously, the Hearts of Pine in Maine have done an incredible job building that out. That's to say nothing of the Cincinnati's and Nashville's and LAFC's that have done it at the higher level in MLS. You know, you said something earlier about you're fascinated with that process from initial announcement to kicking a ball, right? To me, the kicking of the ball is not relevant.
Yeah.
What is relevant is when you open the gates, right?
Yeah.
Because building a soccer team is easy. There are millions of soccer players and thousands of coaches, and I'm not saying it's easy to win, right? And you've got budget constraints, and what those people do is amazing. I could never do it. But the soccer on the field is not the product. The product is the experience that a fan has at the stadium and on social and in their email and at a watch party. That's the product you're selling. What you're selling is this badge, not the name on the back. And so your product is the badge here, not the name on the back. If you think through that lens, right, you will not focus on the soccer so much. You'll focus on what happens when you open the gates and the fans walk in. What's that experience like?
And that is, ironically enough, a piece that to kind of piggyback what you said a moment ago of like, a lot of teams are starting strong. We're seeing so many success stories. We love to see it. But like longevity, sustainability is the key, right? You look at the MLS, a lot of the teams that are least in touch with their community and seem to least resonate are some of the older teams.
Who do you think those are? Who do you think those are?
You're going to
maybe
maybe
those teams?
To name names. I think in general, like older, quote unquote, legacy clubs, like some of the originals. You look around, a lot of the originals.
Who? Name names. Come on.
All right. I'll give you an example. You're familiar with New England. Okay.
Yes.
I spent probably almost 2 weeks this summer in New England.
Okay.
I talked to probably 24 people. I was at Portland Hearts of Pine. I was at Rhode Island FC. I went to Hartford. I was in Western Massachusetts with the Eusebio statue and the Pioneers. I was all over the place. I was at Bay State games, Fiolens, men's leagues.
Sure.
Not once did the Revs come up when I asked people, what's really happening in soccer in your area right now? Not once did the Revs come up, except to say that the stadium is in an inconvenient location. And yes, they just announced they're going to build closer to Boston, but then some people are saying it's still not going to change it. I think that's an example, right? Okay. Where you're looking at a specific place. And if I talk to 20 people in that region and I say, what excites you? What's really in touch with the community in your area? Right now, to be fair, that year, the Revs were still actually third or fourth in the league in average attendance, which I didn't even realize. I was shocked when I saw that. So still
their
like represents that
very
organization. Well. But why, right? Why is that not coming up? Different, but similar. Miami is a story where it's like pre-Messi Inter Miami to a lot of purists, like not even worth the time. And if they do, it's just to critique and kind of laugh at. Messi comes and it changes the face. But this comes back to our virality, our clicks, our attention. What happens post Messi? Are they going to be able to resonate? Those are kind of the questions that I see. And Hearts of Pine, unbelievable experience. Rhode Island, brand new stadium was awesome. What's year 3 going to look like? Year 5, right? Year 10. How do we sustain that? It's more about lines of communication, trying to at least hear and authentically connect with their teams. And the ironic piece of that is that is not a mainstream American sports philosophy at all. That is unique to soccer in America.
It is, yeah. Because, look, you're building a club, right? The fans are part of that. They're supporters. They're not just fans, right? There's a fan and there's a supporter. Those are kind of different things, right? Hearts of Pine, great example, right? What they've done is remarkable, right? But also not unexpected based on how they chose to build their club. Right? Like they did it the right way. Gabe did some amazing stuff up there, building it in the community. He was part of the community, really building it from a grassroots level. They never think of it as a franchise. They think of it as a club and as a community. What the Revs have done around attendance and stuff over the last 3, 4, 5 years is actually remarkable. Right. And I disagree with you. I actually think, I don't know if it was you or someone else said, like, I think the stadium, once they get it downtown, is going to be awesome. It's going to really, I think it'll have a big effect, a positive effect on that team and that club. But to get back to Hearts of Pine, I don't think there's anybody up in Maine going to those games or buying those kits because of any of the players on the field, right? Not a single one. They're doing it because it's a great experience, because it represents them. It reflects who they are, the way the club operates, right? The way that they think. And I disagree with you that the coach has to go and have this ambition. Like, of course, he's going to want to get the best players he can, right? And he'll always do that. But Hearts of Pine cannot afford a single player that's going to move the needle for them. They have to do it based on their community and their culture. Mm-hmm. That's everything. Now, you're right, that there is a question of 5 years from now, can that wear off, right? Can you continue to grow that? That's going to be the question for a lot of these clubs that are doing this, So, but I would argue in Portland, the Timbers are not exactly signing. They're not signing Messi, right? There aren't many players that clubs in MLS sign in reality that move the needle. You can look back at history and the players that have been signed that truly move the needle. Take out the early years with Valderrama and Alexi and Tab Ramos and Luis Hernandez and those guys, right? Currently, right, there aren't a lot of guys in the world who will move the needle.
Agreed. Yeah.
So it's not about that. But the Timbers fans come out and they are awesome and they love the experience and everything. So like if you continue to build as a community and a culture, you can have sustained success. You really can, because the club now means something to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the meaning piece to me. That's so closely aligned with the stories too. Because like, how do we see ourselves as as a fan? How do you see ourselves as a part of that? This question of stories that resonate, we do want to, there is a little bit of a science / art of a melding of the two when it comes to like just being pragmatic about how we're disseminating these stories on different platforms and how we are measuring them. Is that something that comes up a lot with partners as well, brand partnerships of a club? Or do you think that in general, when it comes to partnerships, it's more of that like cultural value alignment? How do you look at the partnership piece? Because that's an important piece of the revenue puzzle for clubs as well.
I think it depends on the level of the club, right? Like if you're Inter Miami and you have Lionel Messi, you're thinking national, international brands, right? If you are, Rhode Island FC, you're probably looking more at the local brands, right? And trying to have that local presence. And so if you have a local bank that, in Rhode Island, whatever it might be, that is, wants to make sure people know, hey, we're here, we're on your street corner, right? And we support the local soccer club, right? It really comes down to what does your club represent? What's your vision for your club? So and I think that as much as like a USL club might talk about, being a big brand or a national brand, very few of them are, right? Hearts of Pine is right now, but eventually it'll sort of, recede to not to the mean necessarily, but they'll be more resonating internally. Like they're a big story in the last year. Great. But eventually they will kind of, become more of a local thing. I think if you're talking to a brand, you're going to end up talking to the brands that resonate with that same culture and that same vision, So it may not be Bank of America, right, that is on your jersey, right? But it might be, Bank of Rhode Island. I don't know if that exists, but you know what I mean, So
it's actually Centerville Bank up in Rhode Island.
Centerville Bank, right? The stadium.
Centerville
what
Bank.
am I thinking about?
Yep.
Right, Centerville Bank Stadium, even. Yes, of course.
I thought you were leaving a breadcrumb there. Yeah, I thought you were.
Yeah, so
that up. Yeah.
I think that it's. So that's what I think where you come down to, and then again, you're going to go and you're going to pitch these brands to become partners, and you're going to tell them the story, right? And they may say, oh well, actually, we're looking for a national story. You're like, okay, well, maybe our club isn't the right one for you. And that's okay, right? But you find those things that fit in that way.
Let's go into our all-time five-a-side segment. Now, a lot of guests get prep time. You didn't get prep time. I sprung this on you at the beginning. So you've only had an hour while talking to me to think of your team. So the beautiful part about this, though, Greg, not only that you have to pick yourself, is that it's always the reason why behind the who. Right? So that's what I'm curious to hear here. So hit us with your all-time five-a-side squad.
Okay.
And remember, you've got to play somewhere in that team.
So, really quick question: is this 4 plus a keeper or 5 and a keeper?
That is a philosophical decision that I allow our guests to choose which style they want, if they want to go with keeper or not.
What size goals are we using?
Yeah, I tend to lean to like the ones that are like hip height, right? The short but wider ones.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more of a UK style in that sense. Yeah. So
Okay.
good practical questions.
Deal. Okay. So you did give me a little bit of a heads up on this. So I will start with Diego Maradona, who is, to me, still the best player that's ever played the game. I think I started this by talking about the 1982 World Cup, right? That's sort of where he first kind of showed up on the international stage. And then 86 is still, to me, 86, I was like 13 for the 86 World Cup. And so it's like right in my wheelhouse of, oh my gosh, this is the biggest thing in the world. So Maradona, for sure. I still think he's better than Messi. Messi has been in various systems, been protected by certain systems. Don't get me wrong, Messi is incredible, right? But I still think Maradona is even better.
Yeah, how does Messi stack up in Serie A 1988 with like guys chopping you in half
Exactly.
10 times a game and all that stuff? Yeah. I think comparison, the thief of joy, but fair enough. Continue.
He's getting crushed. So the next one would be Carlos Valderrama, whom I played with at the Tampa Bay Mutiny in 1996.
Yep. Shout out the Mutiny.
Incredible.
I'm in St. Pete, by the way. So I'm from
nice.
Philly, but I'm in St. Pete. So
love St. Pete.
I've been reading up on our St. Pete Tampa lore a little bit.
Are you in the old town or old Northeast, or where are you?
I'm like 10 minutes to downtown.
Cool.
10 minutes to
I love
Raleigh
St. Pete.
Stadium. So,
There's a great dive bar called the Old Northeast Tavern, which is one of the best dive bars I've ever been to, and the best key lime pie I've ever had in my life. Carlos Valderrama, incredible in tight spaces. So you're 5-a-side. You need someone who's really.
How many times did he meg you?
Oh, I don't know. Lost count.
How many times did you get him back? Did you get him back at one point? Was there a special
never.
day?
No, I might have kicked him once or twice, and that actually got me yelled at by a coach, probably. So, yeah. So in my midfield, those are like my 2 forwards, I guess, like up high. So I'm going to put a player named Brian Mazonoff, was an American kid that I grew up with in Michigan.
Columbus Crew back
Played for the Columbus Crew back in the day.
Okay.
Played for the U.S. at the 1998 World Cup, and he's now the head coach at Ohio State. For me, he is the best American player that I have ever played with. He was smarter than all of us. He had better feet than all of us. And if his ankles had held up, I think he would have gone to Europe and played in, Premier League, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I love Mays, and I would have him on my team. And then so for my last, and then I'm in there in the back, we probably need another defender of some sort. Paolo Maldini, probably the smartest, it's either he or Cafu that are probably the best outside backs that have ever played the game. Roberto Carlos is in there as well. I thought Maldini, again, really smart, incredible first step, a leader on the field, just always very calm, and played for that AC Milan team that, I always thought was really, really great. So that would be my 5-a-side.
Love it. Yeah.
No goalkeeper.
No keeper. Yeah, no keeper.
No.
You guys are holding it down. You're not giving up any shots. So
I don't know. I got Maldini, so that'll help.
100%. Awesome. Greg, that was awesome. Last one here. Okay. Last segment, last piece. We're on the Because Football podcast. Can you pleat the sentence because football
matters?
There it is.
Does that work? Oh, sorry. Do you want me to say the whole thing?
Yeah, there it is. No, there it is.
Okay.
Because football matters. That's why we're here. That's why I can't shut up about it. And probably you're in a similar boat, right?
Cool.
Hopeless obsessive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man. Greg, thank you so much. Where can people get in touch? Reach out?
I'm variously on social platforms on Twitter/X and Instagram, and you can go to shortcornermedia.com and get a hold of us there. That's probably the best place to get a hold of us these days.
We will put all the links in the description so people can get in touch with you. So thanks so much for that. Thanks for being here, man. It was great.
You got it. Thanks, Andrew.
Cool. To everybody listening and watching, thank you for being here as well. Getting into the details of how we grow this game, how we tell. Sorry.
No, I love it. Motorcycles in the background, man. That
How
matters too.
Yeah, I didn't let the local Harley guys know that I was recording a pod right now, so that's all me.
No problem.
But yeah, talk more about how great stories grow this wonderful game. So brilliant. We'll see you guys all on the next episode. Peace.